The year was 2167, and Earth had been part of the galactic community for 3 decades now. But honestly, humans were still treated like the new kids who just moved into the neighborhood. Sure, we had our own seat at the Galactic Council, but most of the older alien species looked at us like we were one bad decision away from blowing ourselves up. Rachel Bennett didn't care much about galactic politics. She had more pressing concerns, like how she was going to pay rent next month. It was nearly midnight when Rachel finally clocked out of her shift at the New Seattle spaceport. She worked in cargo logistics, which was a fancy way of saying she spent 12 hours a day making sure alien goods got loaded onto the right ships. The pay was terrible, the hours were worse, and her boss was a piece of work. But in a galaxy where Earth was still proving itself, you took what you could get. Rachel's feet ached as she walked down Terminal 7. The spaceport never really slept. Even at this hour, there were freighters coming and going, their engines humming like distant thunder. Alien species she couldn't even name wandered past her. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nightmares that had learned to walk upright. She stopped at Wong's Noodle Bar, a little hole-in-the-wall place tucked between a ship repair shop and a currency exchange. Mr. Wong made the best synthetic pork dumplings this side of the Pacific, and more importantly, his prices were cheap enough for Rachel's budget. The place was nearly empty. Just her, Mr. Wong behind the counter, and an old alien sitting alone in the back corner booth. Rachel had seen plenty of aliens in her 3 years at the spaceport, but this one caught her attention. He was Varethi, she thought. One of the ancient species. The ones who'd been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out agriculture. His scales had a faded copper color, like old pennies. The ceremonial robes he wore were patched and threadbare. He hunched over a bowl of plain rice noodles, eating slowly, like each bite took effort. Rachel ordered her usual, number 7 with extra sauce, and tried not to fall asleep standing up. She'd been on her feet since noon, and every muscle in her body was screaming for her bed. That's when she heard Mr. Wong's voice rise. Credit chip no work. You pay cash or you leave. Rachel glanced over. The old Varethi was standing at the counter, holding out a small metallic card. His hands were shaking slightly. I apologize, the alien said in careful, accented English. Perhaps try again? The reader may have. I tried 3 times already. No money, no food. You go now. The Varethi's shoulders sagged. He looked embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. Around the diner, the few other customers were starting to stare. One human guy in a maintenance uniform snickered and whispered something to his friend. Rachel felt something twist in her chest. She knew that feeling. She'd been there before, counting coins at a checkout line, hoping she had enough. That special kind of humiliation when you can't afford something basic. Before she could talk herself out of it, Rachel walked up to the counter. How much is his meal? Mr. Wong looked surprised. 12 credits. But he cannot. I got it. Rachel pulled out her own credit chip, the one with maybe 40 credits left until payday. She swiped it before she could think about the fact that 12 credits was 2 days of lunch for her. The transaction went through. Mr. Wong printed the receipt, still looking confused. The old Varethi turned to face her. Up close, Rachel could see his eyes were a deep amber color, ancient and sad. He studied her face for a long moment. You did not need to do this, he said quietly. Rachel shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward. Yeah, well. We've all been there, right? Card readers mess up all the time. You are kind. The way he said it sounded formal, important somehow. Like he was stating a fact about the universe rather than just giving a compliment. It's just noodles, Rachel said. Don't worry about it. The Varethi reached out and gently touched the back of her hand. His skin was warm, almost hot, and textured like soft leather. I am in your debt, young one. You have shown me something I feared was lost. Before Rachel could ask what he meant, he bowed slightly and shuffled toward the door. She watched him go, this old alien in his worn robes, disappearing into the crowd outside. Mr. Wong handed Rachel her bag of dumplings. That was nice thing you did. Yeah, well. Rachel took her food. See you tomorrow, Mr. Wong. She walked home through streets that glowed with alien advertisements and holographic signs in languages she couldn't read. Her apartment was 30 minutes away on foot because she couldn't afford the transit pass. By the time she climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her studio, her legs felt like rubber. Rachel ate her dumplings cold because she was too tired to heat them up. She thought briefly about the old alien, hoped he got home okay, wherever home was. Then she fell into bed still wearing her work clothes and was asleep in seconds. She had no idea that encounter had just changed everything. Not just for her, but for every human alive. When Rachel woke 8 hours later, the sky was full of warships. Rachel woke to what sounded like the end of the world. The walls of her apartment were shaking. Not gently, like when the subway passed underneath, but violently, like the entire building was about to collapse. Her cheap lamp fell off the nightstand and shattered. Pictures rattled off the walls. Somewhere down the hall, someone was screaming. She stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and ran to the window. What she saw made her forget how to breathe. Ships. Massive, impossible ships hovering over the city. They were nothing like the commercial freighters she saw every day at the spaceport. These were warships, each one the size of a city block, maybe bigger. Their hulls gleamed like polished bronze in the morning sun, covered in symbols and markings she didn't recognize. There were at least a dozen of them, just hanging in the air like they weighed nothing, blocking out half the sky. Rachel grabbed her phone. 53 missed calls. Hundreds of messages. Her news feed was exploding with alerts. Unknown fleet appears over New Seattle. Military on high alert. Residents urged to remain calm. She wasn't the only one watching. Every window in every building had faces pressed against the glass. Down on the street, people were running in every direction, some toward the ships, some away. Traffic had stopped completely. Car alarms were going off everywhere. Rachel's phone rang. Her mom. She answered. Rachel, thank God. Are you okay? Don't go outside, they're saying. Mom, I'm fine. I'm watching from my window. What's happening? Nobody knows. The news is saying they're Varethi ships, but that doesn't make sense. The Varethi have never sent military vessels to Earth. Ever. Your father thinks it might be an invasion, but... A sound cut through the air. Not loud, but it made Rachel's teeth ache. Like a tuning fork struck inside her skull. Mom, I gotta go. I'll call you back. She hung up and looked outside again. One of the smaller ships, though still massive, was descending toward her neighborhood. People on the street were scattering, pushing and shoving to get away. The ship settled into the intersection right in front of her building, its landing struts crushing two parked cars like they were made of cardboard. This can't be real, Rachel whispered. This can't be happening. A ramp extended from the ship's side. Figures emerged. Soldiers, or guards, or whatever the Varethi called them. They wore armor that seemed to shimmer and shift colors in the light. Each one carried weapons that looked ceremonial but were probably very, very functional. They formed two lines, like an honor guard. And then they just stood there, waiting. Rachel's door buzzer went off. Then someone knocked. Hard. She looked through the peephole and saw two men in dark suits. Government types, obviously. Behind them stood one of the Varethi guards, towering over them both. Her hands were shaking as she opened the door. Rachel Bennett. The first suit was already holding up some kind of ID badge. I'm Agent Morrison, UN Security. We need you to come with us immediately. What? Why? What did I do? You're not in trouble. But we need you to come with us right now. It's a matter of extreme urgency. The Varethi guard spoke, its voice deep and resonant. The honored one has requested your presence. This is not a request that can be declined. Rachel's mind was racing. Honored one? She'd never even talked to a Varethi before. Except. No. No way. Is this about last night? The old guy at the noodle shop. Agent Morrison exchanged a glance with his partner. We'll explain everything. But we need to move. Now. They didn't give her time to change. She was still in her wrinkled work clothes from yesterday. They escorted her downstairs, through a crowd of neighbors who stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Mrs. Kim from 3B was crying. Old Mr. Rodriguez crossed himself as she walked past. The street was chaos. News crews had already arrived, cameras pointing at everything. Military vehicles were setting up perimeter barriers. Drones buzzed overhead. And through it all, the Varethi guards walked with Rachel at the center, untouchable. The ramp to the shuttle felt like walking into a dream. Or a nightmare. Rachel couldn't tell which. Inside, the ship was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The walls seemed to glow from within. Symbols moved across surfaces like living things. The air smelled like ozone and something else, something ancient. They sat her in a seat that adjusted itself to her body. The agent sat across from her, looking almost as nervous as she felt. Am I being arrested? Rachel asked. Because I want a lawyer if... You're not under arrest, Morrison said quickly. Miss Bennett, do you know who you helped last night? Some old alien who couldn't pay for his food. I felt bad for him, so I covered it. That's it. That's all that happened. The agent pulled out a tablet and showed her a picture. It was the old Varethi from the restaurant, but he looked different. The robes were pristine, covered in gold thread and jewels. He wore some kind of crown or headdress. He looked important. This, Morrison said slowly, is Lord Keeper Thomas Vale. He's one of the 5 supreme leaders of the Varethi Imperium. Their civilization is over 10,000 years old. Lord Keeper Vale has authority over approximately 40 star systems and 300 billion souls. Rachel stared at the picture. Then at the agent. Then back at the picture. You're joking. I really wish I was. The shuttle lifted off so smoothly Rachel barely felt it. Through the window, she watched her city shrink below. They were heading toward the largest warship, the one that looked like it could swallow her entire neighborhood. Why is he here? Why are there warships? That's what everyone wants to know. The Varethi won't talk to anyone except you. They arrived 3 hours ago and have been waiting for you to wake up. Rachel felt like she might throw up. I just paid for his noodles. It was 12 credits. I didn't know he was. I mean, how was I supposed to know? Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Bennett, apparently that's exactly the point. The Varethi have some law about helping their leaders when they're in disguise. Something about measuring the true character of a species. And you just triggered it. The shuttle docked with the flagship. The ramp extended into a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. Varethi crew members stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. Some bowed their heads. Others just stared. They led her to a massive chamber. It was circular, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above. Around the room stood dozens of Varethi, all wearing elaborate robes and armor. They looked like they'd stepped out of history itself. And there, in the center of it all, was the old alien from the restaurant. Lord Keeper Thomas Vale. He looked the same, but somehow different now that she knew who he was. He smiled when he saw her. Ah, he said warmly. The kind one arrives. Welcome, Rachel Bennett of Earth. We have much to discuss. Rachel's legs felt weak. This couldn't be real. Yesterday she was worried about rent. Today she was standing on an alien warship surrounded by beings who could probably destroy her planet without breaking a sweat. I don't understand what's happening, she said, and hated how small her voice sounded. Lord Keeper Vale stepped forward. You showed kindness to one you did not know, expecting nothing in return. By our most ancient law, the debt of unseen grace has been invoked. The Varethi Imperium now owes you, and your species, a debt of honor that must be repaid. The room seemed to spin. Rachel grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. I just bought you noodles, she whispered. Yes, the Lord Keeper said. And with that simple act, you may have changed the fate of humanity forever. 3 days later, Rachel still couldn't walk down the street without being mobbed. She'd become the most famous person on Earth overnight, and she absolutely hated it. News crews camped outside her apartment building. Her face was on every screen, every feed, every channel. Someone had already made t-shirts with her face on them that said the noodle incident in big letters. It would have been funny if it wasn't her life falling apart. The UN had put her up in a fancy hotel in downtown New Seattle while they figured out what to do. The room was nice, sure, way nicer than her apartment. But she couldn't leave without a security detail, and even then, people mobbed her. Everyone wanted a picture, an autograph, an interview. Everyone wanted something. Her phone never stopped ringing. Her mom called every hour to make sure she was okay. Her dad called to give her advice about lawyers. Her brother Jake called to ask if she could get him on one of the alien ships because that would be sick. Old friends she hadn't talked to in years suddenly remembered she existed. And don't even get her started on the marriage proposals from complete strangers. But worse than all of that were the other calls. The important ones. Corporate executives wanted to offer her money for endorsements. Politicians wanted to use her for their campaigns. Think tanks wanted her opinion on galactic policy like she knew anything about that. And everyone, absolutely everyone, had an opinion about what she should ask for when the Varethi settled their debt. Rachel sat in a UN conference room and tried not to fall asleep as another diplomat droned on about strategic advantages. If we negotiate for technology access, the man was saying, we could leap forward decades, maybe centuries. Medical technology alone could. Or we could ask for territory, another diplomat interrupted. There are 17 uninhabited systems within Varethi space that would be perfect for colonization. Forget territory, a military general barked. We need defense pacts. Protection. There are species out there who'd love to see humanity disappear, and the Varethi could guarantee our safety. They'd been at this for hours. Rachel's head hurt. Ms. Bennett. A woman in an expensive suit leaned forward. You understand how important this decision is, don't you? This is quite literally a once-in-history opportunity. Whatever you choose will affect billions of people. I know, Rachel said quietly. You've told me about 100 times. Then perhaps you could share your thoughts? What are you leaning toward? Rachel looked around the table at all these important people in their expensive clothes, with their fancy titles and their grand plans. None of them had asked her how she was doing. None of them seemed to care that 3 days ago she was just a cargo worker trying to make rent. I don't know, she admitted. This is too big. I didn't sign up for this. I just helped an old man pay for his food. Yes, but now you have to. She doesn't have to do anything right now. Everyone turned. Lord Keeper Thomas Vale stood in the doorway. Nobody had even heard him arrive. He still wore those same worn robes from the restaurant, not the fancy ceremonial ones from the flagship. It was like he was making a point. The diplomats scrambled to their feet, suddenly very nervous. Rachel had learned that the Varethi were old, really old, and very powerful. When one of their leaders showed up, you paid attention. Lord Keeper, the lead diplomat stammered. We weren't expecting you. We were just discussing options for... I heard. Thomas Vale walked into the room with slow, measured steps. You surround this child with pressure and demands. This is not how the debt of unseen grace works. We're simply trying to help her make an informed decision. Are you? The Lord Keeper's amber eyes swept across the table. Or are you trying to make the decision for her? To turn her simple kindness into political currency? The room went silent. Nobody seemed to know what to say to that. Thomas Vale turned to Rachel. Walk with me, young one. Let us talk away from all these eager ears. Rachel didn't need to be asked twice. She practically jumped out of her chair and followed him out. Behind them, she could hear the diplomats erupting into anxious whispers. They walked through the hotel gardens. It was late afternoon, and the sun painted everything gold. The Lord Keeper moved slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Security kept their distance but stayed close enough to watch. I'm sorry, Rachel said after a while. I'm sure you have better things to do than babysit me. On the contrary. You are the most interesting thing that has happened to me in 300 years. Rachel stopped walking. 300 years? You're that old? I am nearly 8,000 years old by your counting. 300 years is merely when I last felt surprised by something. He smiled, and it made him look less alien somehow. You surprised me, Rachel Bennett. By buying you noodles? By seeing me. He sat down on a bench and gestured for her to join him. I have walked among hundreds of species in my long life. I have tested them, as I tested yours. Most times, people see only themselves. Their needs, their problems, their concerns. They walk past suffering without noticing. That's pretty depressing. Yes. It is why I was traveling, why I wanted to see your species up close. We Varethi have watched humanity for 30 years now. We see your violence, your divisions, your struggles. Many of my people believe you are not ready for the galactic stage. That you will destroy yourselves or others. Rachel felt a flash of anger. So you were testing us? That's not fair. One person doesn't represent everyone. No, Thomas agreed. But one person can reveal truth. I did not enter that restaurant to test you specifically, Rachel. I entered tired and hungry, as I had entered many places before. In all my travels, perhaps 1 in 1,000 stopped to help. 1 in 1,000. He looked at her with those ancient eyes. You were that one. You did not help because you expected reward. You did not help because someone was watching. You helped because it was the right thing to do, even when it cost you something. That is rare. That is precious. That is what your species calls humanity. Rachel didn't know what to say. She'd never thought of it that way. It was just noodles. The debt of unseen grace is sacred to my people, Thomas continued. When someone shows kindness to a keeper in disguise, it proves they have honor in their soul. The debt must be honored. But, he raised a hand before she could speak, there is something you should know. What? Not all my people agree with honoring the debt to your species. There is a faction, the purists, who believe humanity is too young, too dangerous. They want the debt declared void. Rachel's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They have invoked an ancient law. The test of 3 truths. You must demonstrate three aspects of worthiness: wisdom, courage, and unity. If you succeed, the debt is honored and humanity gains the friendship of the Imperium. If you fail. He trailed off, but the implication was clear. When? Soon. Perhaps in 2 days. The purists are gathering their council now. Rachel put her head in her hands. Great. Just great. So not only do I have to decide what to ask for, I have to pass some alien test first? And if I fail, humanity loses everything. Yes. That's completely insane. Yes, Thomas said again, but this time with a slight smile. Welcome to galactic politics. They sat in silence for a while. Rachel watched the sun sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in the city, life was going on. People were getting off work, heading home, thinking about dinner. Normal life. She missed normal life. Can I ask you something? Rachel said. Of course. Why do you still wear those old robes? You're basically alien royalty. Shouldn't you be dressed all fancy? Thomas looked down at his worn clothing. These robes remind me of something important. That beneath all our titles and power and ceremony, we are simply beings trying to find our way. I wore them on my journey to remember humility. To remember that a lord keeper or a cargo worker are not so different. We all hunger. We all tire. We all need kindness sometimes. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. She wiped them away quickly. I'm scared, she admitted. Everyone's counting on me, and I don't know if I'm good enough. Smart enough. I'm just, me. Thomas Vale reached over and patted her hand gently. His skin was warm, almost hot. Perhaps, he said softly, being just you is exactly what humanity needs right now. Your leaders and politicians, they think in terms of advantage and strategy. But you? You think in terms of kindness. That may be the greatest wisdom of all. Rachel looked up at the warships still hovering over the city, their bronze hulls gleaming in the fading light. I hope you're right, she said. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither did I, Thomas replied, when I was young. 8,000 years ago, I was terrified of making mistakes. Now I know the truth. The bravest thing anyone can do is try their best and accept they might fail. He stood slowly, joints creaking. Rest tonight, Rachel Bennett. Tomorrow, we prepare. And soon, you will show my people what yours is truly made of. The day of the test of 3 truths arrived too quickly. Rachel hadn't slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined failing, imagined being the person who ruined humanity's one big chance. The hotel bed was comfortable, but comfort doesn't mean much when the weight of an entire species is on your shoulders. They came for her at dawn. Not Thomas this time, but a group of Varethi officials who looked stern and formal. They gave her ceremonial robes to wear, deep blue with silver threading. Rachel felt ridiculous in them, like a kid playing dress-up, but nobody asked her opinion. The shuttle ride to the flagship was quiet. Through the window, she could see Earth below, looking peaceful and small. Somewhere down there, billions of people were watching, waiting. No pressure or anything. The testing chamber was different from the council room she'd seen before. It was massive, circular, with walls that seemed to shimmer and shift. Hundreds of Varethi filled the space, seated in rising tiers like an ancient amphitheater. At the center was an empty space where Rachel assumed she'd be standing. Thomas Vale sat in a place of honor, but he wasn't in charge here. An older Varethi, even more ancient-looking than Thomas, presided over everything. Her scales were almost white, and her eyes held a coldness that made Rachel shiver. I am Elder Keeper Victoria, the ancient alien announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber. I lead the purist faction. We are here to determine if humanity deserves the debt of unseen grace, or if this honor has been falsely given. Rachel walked to the center of the chamber. Her legs felt shaky. Every eye was on her. The test of 3 truths has stood for 7,000 years, Victoria continued. It measures what truly matters. Wisdom. Courage. Unity. These 3 pillars hold up all civilizations. Without them, a species is doomed to fall. Great start, Rachel thought. No pressure. We begin with wisdom. The floor beneath Rachel lit up, projecting a holographic scene. She saw a burning building, figures trapped inside. The scene felt real enough to make her heart race. Victoria's voice cut through the chaos. Before you are 2 scenarios. In the first, you can save 5 people with absolute certainty. They are close, easy to reach. You will succeed. In the second, you attempt to save 50 people, but the building is collapsing. You will likely fail, and all 50 will die. This is the test of wisdom. Choose certainty or risk. Decide now. Rachel stared at the hologram. She could hear screaming, feel heat that wasn't really there. 5 certain lives or 50 risky ones. It seemed impossible. But something about it bothered her. Something felt wrong. This isn't wisdom, Rachel said slowly. This is just a terrible choice. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Victoria raised her hand for silence. You must choose. The test requires it. No. Rachel surprised herself with how firm her voice sounded. I reject both options. This isn't how humans think. We don't accept that wisdom means deciding who dies. We'd try to save the 50 and have backup plans for the 5. We'd call for help, use tools, find another way. Real wisdom isn't picking the least bad option. It's refusing to accept those are the only options. The murmuring grew louder. Some Varethi looked shocked. Others looked angry. But a few, including Thomas, were nodding slowly. Victoria's expression was unreadable. In 7,000 years, no one has ever challenged the test itself. Maybe that's the problem, Rachel said, feeling braver now. Maybe your test is old and doesn't work anymore. The world changes. Wisdom should too. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Victoria spoke. Your answer is acceptable. You have shown that human wisdom questions even ancient certainty. This is either profound or foolish. Time will tell which. She paused. We proceed to courage. The hologram shifted. Now Rachel stood in what looked like an arena. Across from her materialized a Varethi warrior, massive and armored, holding a weapon that hummed with energy. You will face Warrior Jack in combat, Victoria announced. Show us human courage. Rachel's mouth went dry. I'm not a fighter. I work in cargo logistics. Then you will lose. But how you lose will show us your courage. The warrior moved forward, and Rachel realized this was actually happening. She'd been given a training weapon, light but real. Her hands were sweating. Jack attacked, and Rachel barely blocked. He was fast, way faster than something that big should be. Within seconds, she was on the defensive, backing up, her arms already tired. She tried to fight back, really tried, but it was useless. He was toying with her. Every move she made, he countered before she even finished it. This wasn't a test of courage. It was humiliation. Then Rachel understood. She lowered her weapon. Jack stopped mid-strike, confused. The crowd gasped. I can't beat you, Rachel said, breathing hard. You're stronger, faster, trained for this. I'm not. She dropped the weapon completely. But I don't think that's the point. Courage isn't about winning fights you can't win. It's about knowing when to admit you're outmatched. She walked toward Jack, unarmed now, and looked up at him. I'd rather learn from you than pretend I could beat you. That takes more guts than swinging a weapon around until I collapse. Real courage is being honest about your limits and asking for help anyway. Jack stared down at her. Then, slowly, he bowed. It was slight, but everyone saw it. Victoria looked less certain now. This is unconventional. It's human, Thomas Vale spoke up from his seat. They call it humility. Perhaps we should add it to our definition of courage. The purists didn't look happy, but they couldn't deny that Rachel had done something that clearly impressed Warrior Jack himself. One test remains, Victoria said, her voice tight. Unity. You must prove humanity is unified. Show us that your species stands together. And there it was. The impossible one. Rachel almost laughed. We're not unified. You know that. Everyone knows that. Then you fail. Wait. Rachel held up her hand. We're not unified, but we're something better. Can I show you? Victoria gestured permission. Rachel pulled out a device the UN had given her. It projected images above the arena. Scenes from Earth. A protest in Moscow where people argued passionately about climate policy. A debate in Lagos about space exploration funding. Scientists in Beijing disagreeing with scientists in New York about the best approach to asteroid mining. You see fighting, Rachel said. Division. Conflict. But look closer. She changed the images. The same protesters in Moscow, now working together to clean up after the demonstration. The debaters in Lagos, having coffee together after their argument. The scientists, combining their different approaches into something neither had thought of alone. We argue. We disagree. We fight about everything. Rachel's voice grew stronger. But then we work together anyway. We don't need to think the same to build together. That's not weakness. That's strength. Unity means one mind, one voice. That's boring. That's fragile. We have a million voices finding a way forward together. That's harder. That's real. She looked around the chamber at all these ancient beings. You Varethi have had the same government for 10,000 years. Same rules, same traditions. That's stable, sure. But has anything really changed? Really grown? We humans, we're messy and chaotic and we can't agree on anything. But we're always changing, always trying new things. Maybe we fail a lot. But when we succeed, we do it together despite our differences. That's not disunity. That's evolution. The chamber was completely silent. Victoria stood. Her expression was hard to read. You have answered 3 tests with 3 answers we have never heard before. You challenge our wisdom. You redefine our courage. You reject our unity. She paused, and Rachel's heart hammered. This is either the beginning of something new, or the proof that humanity is too different to be trusted. Thomas Vale rose from his seat. Elder Victoria, I invoke my right to speak. Speak, then. In 8,000 years, I have seen civilizations rise and fall. The ones that survived were not the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones that could change, that could learn. This human showed us today that our ancient tests might be incomplete. She did not fail our standards. She showed us our standards might need to evolve. Other Varethi began speaking, arguing. Some angry, some thoughtful. Rachel stood in the center of it all, exhausted and terrified and hoping she hadn't just doomed humanity. Finally, Victoria raised her hand. Silence fell. We will deliberate. The human will wait. They led Rachel to a small room and left her there. Alone with her thoughts and fears, she waited to learn if her best had been good enough. Rachel sat alone in that waiting room for 3 hours. There was nothing to do except stare at the walls and think about everything that could go wrong. The room was nice enough, comfortable even, but it felt like a cage. She could hear muffled sounds from the chamber, voices raised in what sounded like heated debate. Every few minutes, the arguing would get louder, then quiet down again. Her phone had no signal up here, which was probably for the best. She didn't want to see what people on Earth were saying. Didn't want to know if they were blaming her already. She thought about her mom, probably watching this on the news, worrying herself sick. Her dad, trying to act tough but definitely stressed. Her brother Jake, who'd probably think this was all cool and exciting. They had no idea how terrifying it actually was. The door finally opened. A Varethi guard gestured for her to follow. Rachel's legs felt weak as she walked back into the chamber. Every Varethi in the room watched her enter. Some faces looked thoughtful. Others looked angry. She couldn't tell which side had won. Elder Victoria stood at the center, looking older and more tired than before. Thomas Vale stood beside her, his expression carefully neutral. Rachel Bennett of Earth, Victoria began, her voice formal. We have deliberated on your performance in the test of 3 truths. The debate was intense. Many of my faction still believe humanity is too young, too unpredictable. They see your answers as proof that your species does not understand the ways of the galaxy. Rachel's heart sank. This was it. She'd failed. However, Victoria paused. Others, including Lord Keeper Thomas, argue that your answers reveal something we had not considered. That perhaps our tests were designed for younger versions of ourselves, and that they no longer measure what truly matters. She looked directly at Rachel with those ancient eyes. You did not pass our tests the way we expected. But you did something more difficult. You made us question whether our tests were still relevant. That takes a different kind of wisdom. A different kind of courage. Victoria turned to address the entire chamber. After much debate, we have decided. The debt of unseen grace will be honored. The relief hit Rachel so hard she almost fell over. Several Varethi applauded in their strange way, touching their chest with closed fists. But plenty of others looked unhappy about the decision. But, Victoria continued, raising her hand, we will not simply give you what you ask and walk away. That would teach nothing. Instead, the Varethi Imperium extends an offer we have never made to any species in our 10,000-year history. Thomas stepped forward now, and he was smiling. We offer partnership, he said. Access to the Eternal Archive, our repository of knowledge collected across millennia. Cultural exchange programs. A joint council where humans and Varethi can share ideas, debate philosophy, challenge each other's assumptions. We do not offer protection or territory. We offer something better. Friendship between equals. Rachel blinked. Equals? But you're so much more advanced than us. In technology, yes, Thomas agreed. But technology is not wisdom. You showed us today that a young species can teach an old one. That is valuable beyond measure. Victoria nodded, though she still looked stern. This does not mean we trust humanity completely. Trust must be earned over time. But today, you earned the right to begin that journey. Rachel felt tears building up. She didn't try to stop them. Thank you, she managed to say. All of you. Even the ones who didn't want this. I know we're messy and chaotic and we probably mess things up sometimes. But we'll try. I promise we'll try. That, Thomas said gently, is all anyone can do. The formal ceremony continued for another hour. Treaties were signed, documents prepared, plans made. Rachel tried to pay attention, but her mind was spinning. They'd done it. Humanity had actually done it. Finally, they let her return to Earth. The shuttle ride down felt different this time. Lighter somehow. Through the window, she watched her planet grow larger, all those billions of people who didn't have to know how close they'd come to losing everything. The landing pad was chaos. News crews everywhere, cameras flashing, people shouting questions. UN officials rushed forward to escort her through the madness. Everyone wanted a statement, a comment, anything. Rachel just waved and let them hurry her to a waiting car. They took her back to the hotel, but this time, Thomas came with her. They sat in the garden again, just like before, watching the sunset paint the sky. So, Rachel said. What happens now? Now comes the truly difficult part, Thomas replied. Living up to the promise. The purists will be watching, waiting for humanity to prove them right. Every mistake your species makes will be scrutinized. No pressure or anything. Thomas chuckled. Indeed. But I have faith. You showed me something important, Rachel. Your people's ability to acknowledge flaws while still moving forward. That is rare. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Can I ask you something? Rachel said. Always. What are you going to do with the debt? We never talked about that. The Varethi offered partnership, but you personally helped me. What do you want? Rachel had thought about this. Everyone expected her to ask for money or fame or something big. But that felt wrong. I want the money that would have been mine to go somewhere else, she said. To the people who work jobs like mine. The cargo workers, the cleaners, the folks who keep the spaceport running but never get noticed. They deserve better pay, better conditions. And I want funding for schools, so kids can learn about space and aliens and maybe grow up less scared of things that are different. Thomas smiled. No personal wealth. I mean, maybe enough to pay off my student loans and get a better apartment, Rachel admitted. I'm not a saint. But I don't need to be rich. I just want to do work that matters. And what work is that? Rachel had thought about this too, during those 3 hours of waiting. I want to be humanity's liaison to the eternal archive. I want to learn from you and teach you about us. I want to be the person who helps both species understand each other. Not because I'm special, but because I'm normal. I'm just a regular human who tried to do the right thing. Maybe that's exactly what this job needs. Thomas reached over and patted her shoulder. You are wise beyond your years, Rachel Bennett. The position is yours, if you want it. I do. Then welcome to the beginning of a very long journey. 6 months passed. Rachel stood in the eternal archive on the Varethi homeworld, surrounded by more knowledge than she could process in 10 lifetimes. Ancient texts, holographic records, artifacts from civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans even existed. It was overwhelming and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. She'd been studying alongside Varethi scholars, learning their history, their philosophy, their science. But she'd also been teaching them about humanity. About music and art and the weird human tendency to make jokes when things got scary. About love and loss and hope. Some days were hard. The purists still didn't trust her, still didn't trust humanity. There were incidents, mistakes, humans doing stupid human things that made the news. Each time, Rachel had to defend her species while also admitting they'd messed up. But there were good days too. Days when a Varethi scholar got excited about human poetry. Days when human scientists collaborated with ancient alien researchers and discovered something new together. Days when it felt like maybe, just maybe, this crazy partnership might actually work. Rachel was in the archive's meditation garden when her phone buzzed. A message from Earth. Another person had helped an alien in need, a construction worker in Jakarta who'd given his lunch to a hungry Zentari trader. No cameras, no audience, just kindness. More stories were coming in every week. Humans helping aliens, not for reward, just because it was right. Maybe it was Rachel's example. Maybe it was just human nature finally having a chance to shine. Thomas found her there, reading the messages. "Good news?" he asked. "Yeah," Rachel said, smiling. "Really good news. People back home are being kind. Like, genuinely kind." "Your species confuses us," Thomas admitted. "You are capable of such cruelty, yet also such compassion. Such ignorance, yet such wisdom. Such division, yet such cooperation." "Yeah, we're a mess," Rachel agreed. "But we're trying. Isn't that what matters?" Thomas sat beside her. "I have lived 8,000 years. I have seen species rise with certainty and fall with arrogance. But humanity? You rise with doubt and move forward with hope anyway. That is perhaps the bravest thing of all." Rachel looked up at the alien sky, so different from Earth's but beautiful in its own way. "You know what's funny?" she said. 6 months ago, I was just trying to pay my rent. I was nobody special, doing nothing important. Then I bought an old guy some noodles, and now I'm here, on an alien planet, trying to build bridges between species. Do you regret it?" Rachel thought about that. About her small apartment and her boring job and her simple life. About everything that had changed. "No," she said finally. "It's scary and hard and sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing. But it matters. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that really matters." Thomas touched her shoulder warmly. "The kindness you showed changed your world, Rachel Bennett. But I think it changed you too." "Yeah," Rachel said softly. "I guess it did." She pulled out her phone and recorded a message to send back to Earth. "Hey everyone. Rachel here. I know things are crazy right now, with aliens and treaties and all this new stuff. I know it's scary. But I learned something important. Being human isn't about being perfect. It's about trying to be good even when it's hard. It's about helping someone who needs it, even when nobody's watching. It's about looking at the stars and deciding to reach for them anyway." She paused, thinking about everything that had happened. "We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're definitely not the oldest. But we're us, and that's enough. Keep being kind. Keep being curious. Keep being human. The galaxy is watching, and I think we're going to surprise them." She ended the recording and sent it off into space, back toward that little blue planet where this all began. In a noodle shop in New Seattle, a young woman just finishing her shift noticed an elderly alien struggling with the payment terminal. She watched for a moment, then reached for her wallet. "Don't worry," she said with a smile. "I've got it." The cycle continued. And humanity kept reaching for the stars.